Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Making It in Manhattan. As you might know, I just got back from Paris Fashion Week. So for today's episode, we're going to be doing a Paris Fashion Week Q&A. While I was over in Paris, a bunch of you guys sent me questions about Fashion Week over there and what's it like and how is it different from New York Fashion Week. So I thought that we could do a little chit chat today and just dive into all of your questions. So let's get started. So the first question you guys sent me was, how many times have you been to Paris Fashion Week? It's funny, I was actually thinking about this morning. I think it's about 6 times now, which sounds like a lot, but I went 3 times before COVID. And then now this was my 3rd time after COVID. But with that being said, I feel like after COVID, I had to completely start from ground zero, from the first level of building my connections, because as I mentioned in the Paris Fashion Week recap episode, it's all about building connections and fostering those relationships to get invited to the shows abroad. So during COVID, a lot of people left their jobs or moved to different companies or left the fashion industry entirely. So when I started going back to Paris for Fashion Week, my very first Paris back, it was literally like reintroducing myself to people. Also, since then, TikTok had come onto the scene. So not only was I now up against reintroducing myself and rebuilding all of these connections, but I was essentially up against a whole new spectrum of creators. Before COVID, it was only Instagram, really. I mean, there was YouTube as well, but it was really Instagram creators. And now TikTok opened it up to this whole new world of more creators. So now the industry is even more saturated. So getting invited to events and keeping your content fresh and exciting is very, very difficult. And it can be very, hard getting invited to shows now, because now there are so many creators. So every season going into Paris, I just try to be very open-minded, and whether I get invited to one thing or 10 things, I'm just very thankful to be there and to be able to try to build my connections and my brand in Paris and abroad. So I hope every single season it just keeps getting bigger and better, and I keep building new connections. So I think this time, I want to go back and fully count, but I'm almost positive that this was my 6th Paris Fashion Week, which sounds like a lot, but doesn't feel like it, because every time I'm there, it's such a blur. It's like in and out. When you're there, you don't really get to do anything fun. You drive past the Eiffel Tower, you barely get to get out and see it, because you're there working. And I think going in with that mindset that it's work and not vacation definitely sets you up for more success, because when you're leaving on the last day and you realize you only got to eat at like one cafe and barely got to see any of the touristy things, if you know, hey, this was for work, it makes it a little less painful that you really didn't get to do that much. My second question is, how do you pack all of your looks, and what was your favorite thing you wore? I wish I was one of those girlies that was a very good and organized packer. I am just absolute chaos and madness. This season I was proud of myself, since I was going for only about 4 or 5 days, which is a shorter time for me. Usually I go for about 8 days. I tried to plan my outfits in advance, which I always kind of do mentally, but this season I actually tried things on and laid them out and was like, okay, this is the outfit for this day. This is the outfit for this event. Really tried to be a little bit more strategic about it. Then I just kind of start with shoes. I put the shoes in first, most of them. I'll put my heaviest shoes in my carry-on, just so my suitcase isn't overweight, even though it always is overweight. And then I try to roll up my dresses and my tops, and anything tulle, I'm just shoving it in. So I wish I really had more of a strategy and was more of an organized packer, but it's organized chaos in my world and in my closet. I know where everything is, but it looks like a mess. And then my favorite thing I wore, I definitely had 2 favorites. My look for Christian Cowan, the Christian Cowan show, which, as I mentioned, was a long sequin purple dress with feathers on the top. And then for the Christian Louboutin show, I wore a vintage blue Betsey Johnson dress with matching blue Louboutin shoes and a purse and matching tights. So those were my favorite looks and my packing strategy. I wish I could say it was a strategy, but it just essentially like throwing everything in and hoping for the best. And always pack cute pajamas for the get ready with me's. That's the key. The third question is, did you do any vintage shopping in Paris, and can you tell us what it was like? So I am very happy to report this was my very first time that I actually had time in Paris to go vintage shopping, if you can believe that. I've been to Paris even outside of Fashion Week, like 6 times for Fashion Week, like 3 times for personal. And this was my first time I ever had time to go vintage shopping, which is actually insane. My first time back after COVID, which was a February Fashion Week, I was very intent on going vintage shopping. Like, I had some stores saved on Instagram and was super excited. And the only day that I had a gap of time was on a Monday. And so I got an Uber, went to the vintage store I'd been dying to go to. And when I got there, it turned out they were closed only on Mondays. And pretty much the whole street had vintage stores as well. They were all closed on Mondays. So I never got to go vintage shopping until this time. So the store that I'd been dying to go to was called Relic. And I found it literally through Instagram. I think like probably 4 years ago now, somebody else who I follow went there and tagged them. And since that day, I was like, I need to go to this store. I want to get to this store so badly. And so the first Fashion Week after COVID, I tried. I was literally outside. The store was locked and I could not get in. So this time was my redemption time, and I finally got to go in and do some vintage shopping. So the store is really cool. I will say it's like 70s vibes it gives me. The inside is all like orange and yellow and brown, and it has a big neon sign that says Relic, and it has another neon sign of a dirty martini, which you know me and my dirty martinis are my favorite. They had a big squiggly orange mirror. The hangers, they had these really cool vintage hangers that all of the clothing was on, and they were these really, really thin, thick hangers that were yellow and orange and brown and black, and they were super, super cool. Also, what I liked about the store was it wasn't too big. It was a very curated vintage store. I filmed a whole vlog on it, so you got to go check it out. But the store was very much so organized by like dresses, skirts, tops. They even had men's and children's. I got a decent amount of stuff. Let me see if I can remember everything off the top of my head. So I got these vintage yellow pants that were just so cool. This vintage brown jacket, which I really don't wear brown a lot, but it was just such a beautiful coat. It was cropped with a big faux fur collar and big faux fur cuffs, and then orange buttons down the front. So I loved the orange and the brown together. Also, speaking of orange, I got this Speaking of brown, I got this vintage brown dress that had orange and yellow leaves on it, and I felt like it was a very good Thanksgiving dress. So I definitely am planning on wearing that for Thanksgiving with my brown jacket that I also got at Relic. What else did I got? I got this vintage terry cloth top with a zipper up the front. I got a little bag. I got some earrings. I got a bunch of different things. I really went all in because I told myself I'd been dying to go there for so long. The one thing I did not get, though, was on my way there, I was looking on their Instagram because I was so excited, and they posted just that day this vintage cat sweater that had like 2 or 3 cats on it that were white playing with a red ball of yarn. The sweater was like a navy or a black. And then they're playing with a ball of yarn, but the ball of yarn was like little red pom-poms all over the sweater, like moving. And it was such a cute vintage sweater. And so I was like, oh my God, I have to get that. Who else is going to grab a vintage cat sweater? Like, when I get there, I'm getting that. I walk in and some other girl shopping is literally holding the sweater. And I was like, knife in the heart, the vintage that got away. You guys know I like still think about things that I missed out on. So I'm, looking through other things, enjoying my time. But in the side, view of my eye, I'm looking at her like, if she puts that sweater down, I am running. Like, I am getting that sweater. So sadly, she never put the sweater down. But later that day, I went on eBay with Dave and we found a sweater that was super, super similar with the cat. It just didn't have the pom-poms on it with the yarn, which I'm wondering if the person who owns the store added the pom-poms onto the sweater. So I'm thinking I might go to a fabric store in the city and try to buy little red pom-poms and take the sweater to a tailor and see if they'll add the red pom-poms for me. Because I feel like though the sweater was so cute as it was with the little cats playing with the yarn, the pom-poms just made the sweater so much more fun and kooky and cute, and I just loved the pom-poms. So if anyone finds a vintage cat sweater with pom-poms, let your girl know. But compared to New York, the vintage shopping, I mean, the prices were decently good, which I thought was really great. I mean, I go vintage shopping a lot in New York, and I feel like things are very overpriced. What I also liked about Relic, and that's something I really love about certain vintage stores, is like it wasn't just all designer names. It was just cool vintage pieces that were in a well curated small store. Like, just because something has a designer label on it doesn't mean that it's good. And that's just something we all need to keep in mind. Like, some of my favorite vintage things that I own have no label in them, have no name, no designer, are just really cool, different and unique pieces that nobody else will have. And that's what I loved about this store. It wasn't just about the designer names, it was about the cool pieces. And so if you're in Paris or visiting Paris, you got to go to Relic. And then on that street, there was a ton of other vintage stores too. So I took a little leisurely stroll and popped into some things. And there were also 2 vintage pop-ups happening. And I went into one and I actually did end up getting something that was a designer name, because the vintage pop-ups were only designer. And the prices were actually pretty decent. So I saw this vintage pair of Chanel slingbacks that were nude and had a little red cap toe on it, so the nude and the red was just beautiful together, and they were my size and they were under $400 and they were in beautiful condition. So that was my one designer vintage purchase in Paris. I will say it was a very successful vintage shopping trip. Again, I could have gone crazy above and beyond Caroline style, but I also didn't have that much space in my suitcase, which we'll get to. So I had to really contain myself and restrain myself from going overboard. But make sure you go to Relic and you go down that entire street where the store is, because there was other vintage pop-ups and other vintage stores. And the prices were really decently good. But really, aim for not designer vintage when you're traveling, because you can find designer vintage in New York, and you can also find it online on places like eBay and the RealReal and Poshmark. A lot of times you can find the same things. Unless something is an amazing price, then obviously go for it. My next question is, hi, are there any culture shocks that you noticed as an American in Europe? That's a good question. I feel like obviously just certain things like not speaking the language is always a culture shock. Always making sure that you put in the exact pickup location for your Uber rather than just like letting it guess where you are, I think is very important, because in New York, I'll just let the Uber like guess a general location of where I am, and if it's like a little bit off, I'll be fine. I'll be able to find the Uber. But in Paris, I'm like, I need to make sure it's the exact address where I'm at, because I do not speak French, and a decent amount of the Uber drivers, like they didn't really speak English, so needed to make sure of that. It was funny though, on one of my like second to last days, I was taking an Uber and the driver was so nice, and he was telling me how he only spoke a couple of words of English, and he was so sweet, but he was like trying to explain to me that we were so nice because we were from America, and that the people in Europe weren't as nice. But after he told me that, I noticed as I would walk down the street, I would make contact with these local people, and I would smile at them, and most of them, pretty much 95% of the time, would look at me, but then just put their head back down. So definitely was funny, just like after he pointed that out, that he said it, not me, that the local people were not super friendly. And I think it's just like a New York thing in me to like make eye contact with people and smile at people, because you just never know what someone's going through or what's going on in their day. So I always try to like smile at someone while I'm walking by them. But the locals were not having it. Also, something that I thought was funny was one day I was wearing this like strapless big blue tulle dress that I layered over a pair of sparkly jeans, and Dave was with me in a suit, and we went into a little bakery to get sandwiches, and the woman behind the counter actually asked us if it was our wedding, and I just thought that that was so cute and so funny. And I was like, no, this is just a normal, everyday kind of look for me. This is just another average Thursday. But it was funny there, like, being so dressed up. She just thought it had to be for something so special. And I told her it was Fashion Week and everything. But yeah, in terms of cultural shocks, like, not too many. Just little things here and there, like, you know, being uberly friendly, but also, like, it's funny, on one day I wore, like, a beret, and funny enough, this Paris t-shirt, and people were commenting, like, that I, you know, stereotypical looked like a tourist, like, people online. But nobody in Paris, like, even blinked an eye, really, at the fact that I was wearing a beret. Like, maybe it's the Emily in Paris movement, and that people are just so used to, like, the tacky American look now. But really, nobody bothered me when I was shooting on the streets or said anything. Like, they were kind of, like, unfazed by it all. The next question that one of you guys sent me was, how many pairs of shoes did you pack for Paris? To be honest, I'm really not sure of an exact number. I know I packed these red Carell shoes that I'm currently wearing, pink platform loafers, my pink Sarah Jessica Parker shoes, the ones that the sole ripped on for the Met Gala. You guys know which ones I'm talking about. These black Steve Madden like platform heels, a pair of Alexander Bierman sparkly silver shoes, the Roger Vivier shoes, the Christian Louboutin boots, 2 pairs of sneakers. Okay, I'll round up, maybe around 10 pairs of shoes, which seems like a lot, but I needed options, especially because for some of the things, like one of the shows, I didn't know what I was wearing until I got to Paris and I did a fitting, so having options is really important. But I will tell you guys, on the way back, both my luggage and Dave's luggage were overweight. On the way there, they were fine. They were a little bit underweight, and we even packed a Longchamp duffel in Dave's suitcase to take out, and we filled it with stuff on the way back. But I guess between the vintage shopping, and then we also went to Monoprix, which I describe as like their Target kind of, and we just like did a little shopping and got some things you can only get there, even though I didn't think we bought that much. But it was crazy. Each suitcase for being overweight was €120. It was insane. I've never had that happen before. It's usually like €60 or $60 if it's overweight. And we had like literally no more space. We were packed to the brim on the way back. So that's the reality of Paris Fashion Week. Like, my suitcases are always, always, always overweight, even if I try to plan in advance and plan out my outfits and pack an extra duffel bag to put stuff in for the way back. Like, no matter what I do, at least one of my bags is always overweight. So that's the struggle of it all. The next question one of you guys sent me during Paris Fashion Week said, "Hello, I am loving your podcast. I'm wondering if you would ever consider discussing this topic. I'm co-producing a fashion show and would love to know your thoughts from an attendee's perspective on what makes a great show, from the venue to the swag to the music, etc." I loved this question, and though it's not like Paris Fashion Week centric specifically, since we're coming off of Fashion Month, I just thought it would be great to touch on this question. So for me, what makes a great fashion show? I think in terms of the venue, like I mentioned in the Paris Fashion Week episode, a cool venue, a venue that's not just like plain white, a venue that has a little bit of character to it or something special to it, is always really exciting and also makes for like a good photo op. I think something that sometimes like brands don't think about always is like the fact that you want people to also like want to take photos and want to take videos and want to capture the space. So just from a perspective of walking into the venue, you want the space to be eye-catching and something that people want to document. So I think number one, pick a cool venue or a venue that has something interesting about it. The architecture, the color, the design, no matter what it is. So then in terms of also like lighting, I think is really important. I was talking about this with somebody during Paris Fashion Week. Make sure you do a test of like the models walking down the runway. And if there's windows, sure you do it at the time of day when the show is going to be and with the exact lighting you're planning on having. Because sometimes on the phone, the models just don't pick up in a great coloring, especially maybe sometimes brands will use like a blue lighting or a purple lighting or like a different colored lighting. And sometimes I feel like maybe they didn't realize how that would affect the color of the clothing or how it would show up on video. So practice taking videos if you can in the venue so that you know what it'll look like when people post. In terms of production, I mean, shows always start 30 minutes late. So like that's a given. Don't worry about it. Some of my favorite shows that I've ever been to are shows when the entire show is front row. I think that makes for a really cool show. I've been to some Christian Siriano shows, a Christian Cowan show, just like different shows throughout Fashion Week that are like that. It's just only front row. And it just makes it really nice. So then no matter where you're sitting, you have a good view of the models walking. Everyone like, I don't know, can partake in like seeing everything. Sometimes when you get into shows that have like 6 rows, the people in the 6th row like can't really see that well. And so it makes for like, I don't know, is it worth it to do that many rows rather than maybe cut down a little bit, just do like a really big front row or maybe 2 rows, maybe do a front and a second row, first and second row, so that everyone can really, really see well and that you can get good photos no matter where you're sitting. Because obviously, like in the social media age we live in, like the, satisfaction, gratification right after the show is what you see on social media, what people are posting. You can literally leave a show and 5 minutes later see as a designer the return of investment in all of the posts. So if people have a good seat, can see the clothing well, the lighting's good, the atmosphere, the venue's cool, right away you'll see posts and people will want to post. And as a designer, you've just spent all this money on the show, like why not just make it as photographable and photogenic as possible for everyone? Music, I think always pick music that is interesting and entertaining, because especially if people are sitting there for 15 to 30 minutes and it's like a monotone, just one level kind of music, I feel like people start to like lose interest or get bored or fall asleep. So pick some sort of music that's really captivating, or maybe it's like a really like popular song at the moment, or maybe it's something with a cool upbeat vibe that really matches like the vibe of the location or of the clothing or whatever it might be. I think picking music that is interesting and captivating and will keep people wanting more. People have such a short attention span because of social media. Even I'm guilty of it. I'll scroll and I'll start watching a video and then 2 seconds in I'm like, and I scroll away. People have just short attention spans, I think, nowadays. So do anything you can to keep them captivated. In terms of models, diversity is so important right now. All ages, all body types, all backgrounds, everything. I think include all kinds of models, as many as you can, because that just makes for a more engaging show. Not everyone looks like a model. Not everyone is, 6 foot, skinny, and white. So people want to look at the runway and look at your clothing and your collection and feel like they can see themselves wearing the collection. They can see themselves wearing the clothing. So I think as much diversity when it comes to models as possible just makes for an incredibly well-rounded show. And then you also asked about swag. I think gift bags, it's funny. I feel like back in the day, designers, like if they had a makeup brand, they'd maybe put little gift bags on every single seat of like a lipstick or a nail polish or something. I feel like gift bags have slowly died, but I feel like people still definitely appreciate them if you put something interesting in them. Maybe it's like some beauty products and even like a little snack. Maybe it's like some sort of chic, like upscale, like snack that people can eat on the go during fashion week because people are so busy. A portable charger, like things that people could use during fashion week, I feel like in a swag bag would be so beneficial. But I hope that helped. I think diversity in models, a cool venue, keep the music engaging. Think about the lighting. Please think about the lighting. I think all of these things will make for a really great show for you. Next question is, where's your first stop in Paris every time you visit? I wish I had a first stop because I feel like the last several times I went for Fashion Week, and so when I get there, I just dive into events or shows or parties or fittings, or I'm just super tired and I go to bed. But one cafe that I always try to visit when I'm there, and please forgive my accent, is called Les Deux Magots. And I will spell it out. It's LESDEUXMAGOTS. And it's right next to Café de Flore, but I like it better than Café de Flore, and I think it's just so delicious. The croque madame is so good. I wish I was eating it right now. And the atmosphere is beautiful, and it's a spot that I always have to try to visit no matter anytime I'm in Paris. But I wish I had like a first stop kind of thing. Like, oh my gosh, I always go there and I always get this. But I really have never had the time to be like, this is my first stop. Maybe I'll change that in the future. If you have any recommendations, let me know. The next question, how does jet lag impact your experience? It definitely does impact it. Like, especially this time, I feel like I was very tired the first few days, but I think I was running on such an adrenaline of knowing, oh my gosh, I have to get up early the next day to go to this show or to start getting hair and makeup done or whatever it might be, that even though when I was sleeping, like I didn't sleep soundly because in the back of my mind, I was so anxious and my anxiety was so high that I knew I had to get up and I knew I had so much to do. So with that being said, jet lag, definitely. Like, I get there, I'm exhausted, but I'm so excited and my adrenaline's so high and I'm so happy to be there that I feel like I'm, like, running just on the adrenaline of it all. And then it's funny, by the end of the trip, I'm, like, fine, and then it's time to go home. So, this time I flew at a super late nighttime flight at 11:55 p.m., landed 1 in the afternoon, and I kind of liked that. Like, it was kind of a nice timing wise, because then by the time I got to my hotel, it was time for check-in. I was able to get into the hotel and sleep for a little bit before my night party, whereas in the past I've flown in about, like, I've left New York around 7, and then I'll get there like in the morning Paris time, and then my hotel is never ready, so then I need to like occupy myself, like, and do stuff around Paris in a few hours before the hotel's ready, and I'm so tired. So I think I might try this flight schedule again in the future. I'd also love to try flying so that I would land like at 8 p.m. Paris time, so then I could just go to my hotel and go to bed and wake up the next day hopefully refreshed. That's my theory on that. I've never tried that before, but I've always wanted to try that. So maybe next time I'll try that, or I'll try the midnight flight again like I did last time. I only have 2 questions left. The next one is, does your hubby enjoy talking to everyone and going to events? That's a great question because I brought Dave this time as my partner in crime during Paris Fashion Week. He took all my photos, came with me to a bunch of events. He even was an angel and picked up and returned outfits for me. But Dave, thankfully, is very social. And he is great at talking to everyone and anyone, and he gets along great with my friends and coworkers in the industry. So he's a great +1 at the events. He also is great because he'll just like sneak in and like take a video for me, or if like I'm on the step and repeat and going to get my photo taken, like at the YSL party, he'll sneak right in and get videos for me. And he's always in a suit, so he always looks like very professional. Maybe sometimes people are like, oh, does he work for the venue? Like, who knows? But yeah, he enjoys talking to everyone, and I think that's a funny question. But maybe if he wasn't super social and didn't enjoy doing all that, like, who knows if we'd be together. Like, he's kind of a great person in terms of, like, he just rolls with the punches. He's down for anything. He is, I needed him to go pick up stuff because one of my outfits didn't fit, and he was like, okay, I'm getting the Uber, I'm going. Just very supportive. And I think in this industry, if you're dating somebody or looking for a partner, just make sure that they're very supportive of what you do and that they respect what you do, because I know a lot of times in the influencer content creator world, a lot of people don't respect this as a job, or they think we just take photos all day and it's so easy and anyone can do it. So making sure that you're with someone who respects you and respects what you do as an art, and as a creative, like, is so, so important. And I'm very lucky that he is so supportive of all of that. And then number 10, last but not least, how can I get invited to Fashion Week? Is it something you can apply for? So you cannot necessarily apply. There isn't a link that you can go online and apply to go to a show. But I talked about this a little bit in my New York Fashion Week podcast, was that you do show requests, which I guess is kind of like applying, where you email the PR people and the designers and essentially pitch yourself to attend the shows. You can't buy tickets, really. I mean, I know some brands who sell tickets to their shows, but not many. The best way to get invited to Fashion Week is by building a presence online in the fashion space in particular as a fashion focused creator, and then trying to build relationships with the different brands, especially in Europe and abroad, and then when the time comes, doing outreach to these brands and essentially pitching yourself to attend the shows in a pitch email, and including links to your social media, links to freelance writing you've done, styling, whatever it might be. So there isn't a form to apply online, but definitely you can pitch yourself, which is kind of like applying, I guess, when you think about it. But that's the best way to get invited. But if you haven't listened to the New York Fashion Week recap and everything, definitely go listen to my New York Fashion Week podcast, because I touch on getting invited and all that stuff a lot more. So my Making It in Manhattan tip of the week is, when I go on a trip like Paris Fashion Week, I always try to create Pinterest boards and saved folders on Instagram and TikTok, and I do these to fill them with restaurants and vintage stores and different places I'd want to check out along the way, and for photo inspiration. It's a really good way for me to create an aesthetic or a visual mood board of what I want to do while I'm there. It's also a great way on TikTok, if I see a video of this is the restaurant you have to check out in Paris, I literally have a folder saved that says Paris Fashion Week, and I will save all of those to those folders. I'll save audios that I want to try to do. So essentially I'm creating a blueprint for myself ahead of time of everything I want to do. So if you're going to New York Fashion Week, Paris Fashion Week, create an inspirational mood board on different platforms for yourself. Photo inspiration is great as well. They took a photo at this location. Especially, I'm not from Paris. I really don't know every spot and every location. Saving photos and getting inspiration of where to pose, some good photo shoot locations, good video locations. Do all of that in advance before you go, so that when you get there, you're not oh my gosh, where should I eat? Where should I shop? What should I do? Where should I take photos? Do it all in advance. I try my best to do it all in advance and save audios and videos and pictures and restaurants and vintage stores, so that when the time comes and I'm there, I'm all set. I just go to my saved folders and I know exactly where I want to do, where I want to eat, and where I want to shop. So that is a wrap on another episode of Making It in Manhattan. Send me a message and let me know where your favorite places to eat, shop, and drink in Paris are, and I will see you guys soon.